Darren Aronofsky, famous for his film on the scourge of drug addiction, Requiem for a Dream, made a spiritual film in the 2000s, The Fountain. A personal project, in his interviews he explained that he wanted the film to express his wishes and hopes about love and the afterlife. Starring Hugh Jackman and Rachel Weisz, the film is a beautiful exploration of the human condition. The film is very polarizing. Some people disparage it and dismiss it, while others appreciate the symbolism of it. One of its highlights is its powerful soundtrack made by Clint Mansell. Some of his best tracks, which explore existentialist themes, are The Last Man, Stay With Me, and Death is the Road to Awe. Despite its uniqueness, the film was a commercial failure, costing more to make than it made at the box office. Despite this, it's become a cult classic to people who appreciate the symbolism of it. Aronofsky said his original plan of the film was far larger, grander, and more cinematic, dividing it into 3 separate works of equal length to explore the lives of the different characters. Forced to shorten the film and compromise, we can still appreciate his vision for the work and try to unpack what he wanted to say. Heavy in allegory and visual symbolism, we can unpack these to derive its theme, an examination of the human experience of love, death, and immortality. In the film, Hugh Jackman plays Dr. Tommy Creo, while Rachel Weisz plays his wife Izzy, who's developed a terminal disease of the brain. Tommy spends most of the film trying to find a remedy for his wife, investigating various treatments, like a component of a rare plant from Central America. The film shows the sincerity and devotion of the couple. They embody the archetype of the lovers, the divine masculine and feminine, or the universal love affair. This was a trope we explored in other videos. While Izzy's condition has made her husband serious and gloomy, she appreciates the time they have left and remains filled with wonder, gregarious and playful. One of the tensions of the film is that while Izzy has accepted her mortality and wants to enjoy the remaining time she has left with her spouse, Tommy lives in denial and holds out the hope he can heal his wife. He becomes so obsessed with treatment and prolonging his wife's life that he fails to spend time with her. In one scene, Tommy refuses to go on a walk with Izzy as he's busy working in the lab. He comes to regret this choice later when she's gone and he's alone. In another regretful scene, Tommy loses his wedding ring, having taken it off and placed it in a sink while preparing for surgery. While Tommy feels guilty, we can have some sympathy for the character. He's grappling with complex emotions. He's in denial his spouse has a terminal illness, and like anyone, vacillates between love, devotion, efforts at prevention and recovery, and enjoying the limited time they have left. While ill, Izzy becomes a writer. She writes a historical drama, a book based on the history of Spain. In it, she imagines herself as Queen Isabella, inspired by the real-life figure, who's become obsessed with the quest for immortality. In this, we find an aspiration that recalls one of our other videos, the quest for enlightenment. Rather than seek immortality on the spiritual plane, however, Isabella seeks it in the here and now, imagining a physical immortality if she can recover the sap of the tree of life. This tree becomes one of the symbols of the film, recalling its appearance in the Bible in the book of Genesis. It also recalls its appearance in other works, like in Norse mythology, Jewish mysticism, or in the works of Tolkien. Tommy and Izzy parallel Adam and Eve, becoming an example of the universal couple. In the original garden, they lived happily forever, completing each other and eating from the tree of life. In the myth, however, they fall. They eat from the tree of knowledge, gain self-consciousness, and once removed from the state of union with God, find themselves expelled. God bars their re-entry and posts an angel with a flaming sword to guard the garden from them. In the history of Spain, the real-life Queen Isabella was a patron of Thomas de Torquemada, the Grand Inquisitor. In Izzy's fictional work, however, the two are enemies. The Inquisitor works to undermine her and usurp her kingdom from within. In response, Isabella tasks the fictional version of her husband, here the conquistador Tomas, to lead an expedition to America to find the Tree of Life. Tomas's role as a conquistador suggests his quest is one of the warrior or hero, a conqueror who seeks to overcome the limits of the human condition. Isabella gives Tomas a signet ring to remind him of his quest. It becomes a powerful symbol throughout the film, representing fidelity, devotion, and completion. She also appoints Father Avila to help Tomas find the Tree of Life. Here we find a reference to mystical symbolism, the character's name recalling the Spanish mystics. Loss is a powerful force in the film. Its blackness and finality are affirmed again and again. While in the museum, Izzy and Tommy enjoy each other as they explore ancient Mayan art. In doing so, though, Izzy faints, and her condition suddenly becomes much worse. She deteriorates rapidly before passing away, traumatizing her husband. After Izzy dies, Tommy sits in the empty bed where he used to lie with her. He thinks back on the happy memories they had together, imagining all the times they ran through the halls of the house. He looks at the book The Fountain she left for him, having been asked to write its final chapter. Her words, "Finish it," recalling Christ's line from the Bible, instills the request with a higher meaning. Tommy takes the pen to write, but becomes frustrated and injures himself in a moment of unintended self-harm. Feeling regret over having lost their ring, the symbol of their bond, he uses the pen to create a beautiful symbol. Trying to redeem himself, he uses the ink to inscribe a wedding band on his finger, leaving a permanent mark of his fidelity to Izzy. Tommy's name recalls Thomas from the Bible, who doesn't believe in the resurrection of Christ. It shows his tough grappling with the idea of immortality. In one scene, Tommy has a vision of himself in old age, alone, frail, and wizened in a hospital bed. Without Izzy or any family to console him, it's a sad conclusion to his life, but an apparent inevitability for most of us. This bleak image shows the cynicism of Thomas and stands in contrast to the more hopeful symbols of the film. When Tomas arrives on the Spanish Main, he ventures with his companions deep into Central America, penetrating the Mayan highlands of Guatemala. As they venture deep into the jungle, Tomas's companions become convinced he's been consumed by madness. This recalls some of the archetypes of the spiritual seeker we've explored before, like those of Odin or Shiva. Tomas's companions try to mutiny against him, but he fights and dispatches them before persuading the others to stay with him. The Spanish priest, Father Avila, offers Tomas counsel. With his name referencing Teresa of Avila, we can view this plot as an allegory for the inner life. The priest points to a hidden temple located deep in the jungle. After he passes away, Tomas continues the quest, venturing deeper into the wilderness and finding the fane, defended by warlike natives. These natives are fierce fighters who live in a kind of primeval darkness. The conquistadors aren't averse to using violence to fight them, recalling their historical equivalents. Though the Spaniards are better armed and able to resist their attackers, Tomas's companions are slain and fall into defeat and desperation. The natives surround Tomas and press him forward, pushing him towards the temple's sanctuary. There he crosses the threshold, an important trope in mythology. When he enters the temple, the conquistador encounters a Mayan priest. Speaking in his sacred language, the priest refuses him entry. He attacks him with his flaming sword, killing Tomas and bringing his quest to an end. Recalling the angel who guards the garden, this shows God's judgment and his barrier to man reclaiming his deathless nature. Despite all his travails and adversities, Tomas's journey doesn't end in enlightenment, but in disaster, defeat, and death. Tomas wakes up in another life, one ethereal and otherworldly. With a shaved head and simple clothes, he travels through space as a kind of monastic. Apparently a Buddhist monk or mystic, he speeds through the astral world in a ghostly dome, accompanied by the Tree of Life. The symbolism here is strange, alien, and dreamlike, but we can appreciate it in the context of the film. His experience here seems to reference reincarnation in different lifetimes. In Buddhism, the Buddha taught that an individual attained enlightenment after working toward it over several lives. After achieving stream winning, one had at most 7 more lives before attaining liberation. Eventually, one became a non-returner or arahant, and with their accumulated merit, came to achieve the fullness of the inner quest in one earthly life. Thomas meditates frequently in this strange realm, and while doing so seems to develop one of the psychic powers described in Indian religion, the ability to recall past lives. In doing so, he remembers his life as Tommy Creo, and also seems to recall that Izzy's book is itself a recollection of another life. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche had the idea of eternal recurrence, where we're forced to return, life after life, to repeat the same fate. In all of Tommy's lives, he experiences the same tragedies again and again, experiencing love and longing, the dream of overcoming death, and the quest for immortality. He develops a limerence or love affair with Izzy in all of his lives, and in this implies this may be an experience of all of us, incarnating with the same loved ones, life after life. As recurrence, rebirth is portrayed in a negative sense, but in Tommy's life as a monastic, it's shown as a vehicle to his long-term growth and maturation into a higher self. As the mystical Thomas speeds through the astral world, he has another vision of his life as a conquistador. He returns to the same temple, encountering the Mayan priest. Here he appears before him as a great contemplative, showing the merit he's gained over his many lives. The priest recognizes him as the first father, an archetype of the magician. He presents his neck for beheading, recalling the symbolisms of India we've explored before. Thomas willingly cuts the priest's throat and helps him onto the floor of the temple. The priest embraces a voluntary death of self-sacrifice, donating his blood to feed the earth. Tomas then enters the highest chamber of the temple, a hidden grotto where a fountain and tree are held. Tomas enters cautiously. On reaching the tree, he uses a ceremonial dagger to stab into it. The tree produces sap, which he takes and applies to his wounds, finding that it heals him. Thinking he's found the elixir of life, he begins drinking, then gorging himself on the sap, thinking it will make him live forever. As he does this, he becomes intoxicated, then loses himself in a vision of the divine. He has a glimpse of the beatific vision, similar to what Dante sees in the Paradiso. He takes the signet ring given to him by Isabella and puts it on his finger as a symbol of his completing his quest. However, his situation turns into one of horror. His vision collapses, his ears ring in cacophony, and he falls over in pain. His ambrosial drink turns into poison, consuming him and killing him. Tomas's fate seems to symbolize the fate of those who seek a material and selfish end to the spiritual quest. Like Orpheus, their fate is instead disappointment, frustration, and doom. Meanwhile, the mystical Tom has another vision. He returns to the same scene in his saintly form, having been edified and strengthened after many lives and years of wisdom. Selfless and detached, he reaches down and retrieves the ring, putting it on his spiritual finger instead. This suggests a different kind of union than that envisioned by the conquistador, the spiritual marriage, like that described by Teresa of Avila. He then ascends, surrendering to the developments of the inner life. His new vision grows and becomes more fantastic, showing the mystic going through the experience of illumination. Eventually, his vision remits, turning black and empty, showing the dark night of the soul. This references one of the worst periods of desolation and aloneness on the spiritual path. After an apparent dead end, suddenly the darkness breaks, and the mystical Tom experiences a religious ecstasy. The symbolism shows a transcendence of self, his body shattering, and in moving beyond the physical and finite to a state of self-loss and enlightenment. The film concludes with a return to Tommy Creo, standing in a winter scene. In a vision, his wife hands him a seed. He digs down in the snow and plants it, envisioning a future where it will become a tree. Like the rebirth of a tree, death and resurrection are central themes of the film. Tommy grapples with the death of his wife and lives in denial about it. Love and meaning recur in the film, showing that we get our senses of value and purpose from our relationships with those who care about us. Tommy and Izzy represent the universal male and female, like we explored in our video on Indian religion. Their quest for deathlessness and eternal union, getting at something existential to the human experience.